This is Ask Joe 233.
Hi everybody, Joe Gilder here from Home Studio Corner. You can't see my face today because my camera died. It froze, and after the stream began, so we're just gonna roll with it. I'm gonna do a faceless podcast where you're just gonna see. If you're listening to the audio, this is no different than every week. But if you are watching the video and you can't see my face, that's why. So you can we'll zoom in real good. Let's do this. Let's zoom in on my voice here so you can see me talking. There you go. That's just as good as being here in real life, right? Okay. Hey, my name is Joe Gilder from HomestudioCorner.com. Super glad you're here. If this is your first time on the live stream or listening to the podcast, thanks for tuning in. I've run Home Studio Corner since 2009. It exists to help frustrated musicians make the best music of their life. That's essentially, in a nutshell, what I do. I've got tons of videos for free on my YouTube channel, tons of articles, emails, lots of stuff like that. And then I've got a bunch of courses that I've created over the years that are designed to help you tackle all the different problems you might face when you're trying to make music in a home studio. Things like learning how to use EQ, learning how to use compression, the entire mixing process, recording things like guitars and vocals, acoustic guitars, electric guitars, producing a song from start to finish. I've done up 20, actually, different courses over the years, all designed to help you get better recordings and mixes in your home studio. So if you're looking for some more in-depth training beyond what you can get on YouTube, and you can get lots on YouTube, but if you want something a little more structured with a little more kind of walk you through the process, my courses are where it's at. And just last night I did a live stream that was super fun, and I announced a new thing that I've never had before. I've mentioned it on the podcast the last couple of weeks. It's called the VIP Gold membership. So I've had a VIP membership since 2011. This is the new Gold membership, which is a new level that gets you access to all my courses, all 20 courses, for one price. If you were to buy them all separately, it'd be like $1,500. If you go sign up now, head over to the members area, or head over to homestudiocorner.com/VIP, which that web address looks like this. Head to homestudiocorner.com/VIP. There's a video there you can watch to learn more about it and see if it's right for you. You get a ton of material that will help you. Honestly, in the next few months, you'll be making the best music of your life based on the stuff you learn and apply from the VIP area. There's monthly challenges to get you making music. There's tons of courses you have access to. It's just killer, and I'm super excited about it. So that's going to be kind of all I want to talk about today, because I really want to get into your questions. We got a smaller group today because I think Warren Hewitt is doing a live stream at the same time as this. So I'm just going to say thank you for being here, by the way. Now, I love Warren. I kind of wish I could cancel the live stream and go watch his. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick around and hang out with you beautiful people and answer as many questions as I can. How's that sound? Boom. All right, so while I'm yapping here, get your questions ready and start leaving them, and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. Since we have a little bit of a smaller crowd, that means you can, oh, there's my chat. That means you can probably get a few more questions in than normal, and I'll do my best to answer them. And if you have questions about that VIP Gold thing, feel free to ask those as well. It's new, it's different, it takes a little time to figure out what that is, but it's something I'm really excited about, and you should be too. Let's see if we got any questions here in the chat. Why is Mac OS better for production and recording than Windows? That's from NP. I would say it's not. A lot of people use it. I just like Mac, and it's what I've used since I first got into, more proper recording. I got a Mac and was using Pro Tools because that's what all the studios I went to were using, and so I just used it, and it's worked out really well. But can you make great music on a PC? Absolutely. These are the kind of debates that I don't like to get into because they're boring to me. What computer you used had nothing to do with the music being amazing, right? It's how you used it. And that's what I talk about all the time. It doesn't matter. It really, as long as you're not scraping the bottom of the barrel with your equipment, you can make amazing sounding music using exactly what you have. You just need the practice and the skills to do that. Which again is why my VIP Gold, I'm sorry, I'm really excited about this Gold thing. My VIP Gold is a game changer for you. Go check it out, homestudiocorner.com/VIP. Teach you to make great music using what you have instead of feeding the lie that you always got to upgrade to new stuff. Speaking of upgrading to new stuff, Kip Buckner says, saw your video on Studio One version 4, which is out today. That's actually the version you're seeing scrolling across my screen right now. He says, how much is the upgrade? I think it's $150. I don't know. They gave it to me for free to review before it came out today. Not a ton of features that I'm excited about personally, but there's some interesting technology they've added and a couple of cool new features like import song data, which I just put a video up on my channel about that. So check that out if you're interested and you're a Studio One user. Let's see what else we have question-wise. How do you deal with low-mid buildup on a mix? Great question, Donald. There's two ways to deal with it. The first and best way is to deal with it on the front end with your microphone placement and the choices of what you record. If you're going to record a bunch of Les Pauls on the neck pickup with a pretty clean tone, there's a good chance you're going to have low-mid buildup just because of that alone. You may want to mix it up and not record as many low-mid heavy instruments so that the way you're producing the song yields to a more full sound. So the tones themselves of what you're recording are big. Then how you record them. If you're putting the mic right up next to it, if it's a cardioid mic, a directional mic, it's going to have more low end. A lot of times you can use that to your advantage. For example, if I want to sound super sexy, I'll get really close to the microphone, and that gives me more of a bass response, right? But that can be great or it can be bad. If you're miking things too closely, they can be muddy. So dealing with it on the front end during recording is the first step. And then on the back end, it's literally just a matter of most of the EQ that you should do in a mix is probably going to be subtractive, meaning you're taking away frequencies. And I found the bulk of those frequencies are the low mids. That's just where a lot of the fundamental energy of all the things we record lie. Vocals, guitars, pianos, most drums have really strong fundamental frequencies in that low-mid range. So if we don't take some of that out, you end up with a muddy mix. Now on the flip side, if you take too much out, then your mix starts to sound hollow and sometimes harsh. So you gotta toe the line between the two. You'll probably go too far in one direction and then too far in the other. That's okay, we all do that. But hopefully you land on something that sounds balanced. Remember, the goal here is for balance. We're not trying to get rid of low-mid frequencies. We're just trying to make them be around the same volume as everything else so that they don't stand out. It's an important thing to remember. Hey, Joe, I have Studio One 3 Artist. Do I need to buy Studio One 4 Artist or do I get it for free? No clue. You should ask Presonus. Watchmaker says, how do you approach tape emulation in your mixes? I don't. I've never used tape emulation. I'm sure I'm missing out. But I'm happy with the sounds I'm getting using the stuff I'm using. So I don't come up with ideas of new things to add to make things more complicated. Lee Hoffman says, do you feel like the preamps in your studio mixer affect the quality of your recordings? Absolutely. The preamp is a part of the sound, and sometimes it's a huge part of the sound. If you have really cheap, crappy preamps, your music might sound cheap and crappy. But that doesn't mean you have to have $2,000 preamps to get good recordings. The ones on most decent audio interfaces today are more than adequate for getting good recordings. They're going to be clean. They're going to have a decent amount of gain, not a ton of noise. They're not going to have a lot of character. So maybe one really nice external preamp makes sense to give more character, to have a separate sound to record, but by no means is any of that necessary. Coda Talltree says, my mastered recording ended up sounding different than what I was hearing through my monitors. What's the deal with that? Thanks for all the help. It could be any number of things. Most likely, every room that you're going to be in is going to lie to you. Every set of speakers lies to you. They're not giving you a perfectly accurate sound. But that's okay. That's just the rule. That's not the rule, but that's just how things work. Chances are, I'm guessing you haven't released a lot of music, and so you probably don't actually know what a good mix is supposed to sound like on your speakers in your studio. So what sounds good to you, if you were to flip over to one of your favorite records and listen to it, would it sound the same as your mix? I'm going to guess probably not. I'm going to guess your mix has problems that maybe you're not hearing or don't realize are there. But if you listen to more professionally produced and mixed and released records in your studio, in your mix position through your speakers, you'd notice there's a difference between yours and theirs. It's not just a volume difference. You can level match them and listen to just the tonal differences, and you'll start to hear the differences there. That's why people stress using reference tracks so much. I don't do it as much nowadays. I've never done it a lot, honestly, and maybe it's a bad thing, but for the most part, I do it as I listen to references all the time everywhere. I'm listening to music, and then when I listen to my music, it should stand up against the stuff I've been listening to. If it doesn't, something's wrong with my mix, not with anything else. Good question. Joel says, he asked about my Taylor last night on the live stream. He says, I know there's no sub for a second guitar, but you got any other tips than to EQ them differently to get the differences as two guitars would? The biggest thing is to play different parts. So don't play the same part twice. If you're going to play something in the key of G, then on the second pass, capo 2 and play it in, capo 3 and play it in E. Or capo way up high, like whatever, 7 or so, and play it in C. Or if the song's in E, play it in open tuning, or play it open, and then capo 4 and play it in C. And those are your two tracks. They're going to have different voicings, which is going to really help. Also, different mic placement, different mic choice. Go from a condenser to a dynamic if you want a radically different sound. Put the microphone in a different position. That's going to give you a radically different sound. It'll still ultimately sound like a Taylor, but it's going to be different, which is maybe all you need. If you're just now joining us, Mark Sears, I see you there. My camera stopped working right as the stream started, so you're getting a voice-only episode, which is probably a good break for your eyeballs, if we're being honest. Josiah says, hey, Joe, as a studio owner, what do you say to potential clients who want to produce music that you don't want to listen to personally, i.e. it's immoral or explicit? I've not had to run into that. I'm usually running in circles of people that making music together just makes sense. I'm usually inviting them to make music. They're not coming to me. So somebody else just emailed me this morning. Honestly, I don't like to waste a lot of time thinking about the things I won't do. I think that's kind of a backwards sort of negative thought process. Just focus on making great music and working with great people. A lot of people think, oh, how do I prevent people from taking advantage of me and, not paying me and things like that. If you think about those things a lot, it's going to come true. There's this weird, kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that happens. If you're a person who is always a victim or is always negative, then all these victim sort of things and all these negative sort of things happen to you. And it's kind of you kind of end up looking for them. So if you're worried about what to do with this music, you're going to start looking for music that is immoral or explicit, and then you have to deal with that problem. I would just look for music that you connect with and work with people that you connect with. And if it comes up, you've got to deal with it, but that's not something I've had to ever deal with personally. Supersonic says, nothing. Okay, he just said he needed to hear what I said earlier. Awesome. Sizzleman says, sorry if this has been talked about. Any updates on the new Mixed Together series? It is coming very soon. I still haven't picked, but I will be picking the song and getting the tracks and doing that very, very soon, probably in the next month or so. Jim Edgar, oh, no question. Thanks for being here. A name with lots of Greek characters says, during mixing and production, how do you decide if certain parts need to be left rough and dirty or made uglier in order to enhance the vibe? It's easy to make it clean, but then it's just boring. I think a big part of that is just immersing yourself in really well done productions. Listen to lots of good music and kind of pay attention to what they do. Do they do lots of really clean stuff, or are there some stuff where they kind of take liberties and make it sound weird and wonky? For me, a lot of that's just a gut thing. I listen to something and say, that sounds boring, how can I make it less boring? And sometimes that means adding distortion and delay to it, and now it's more interesting. If you're bored with it, then find a way to not be bored with it. That could mean making it dirty. That could mean bringing up another track in the song to cover it up. It could mean recording something all new. It could mean muting something. If it's not helping it and making it more interesting, maybe it needs to go. Bill Roofs, is your upcoming production course, will you be covering arrangement at all? Yeah, so if you were there last night, that was kind of the first video and kind of a sample of a new course I'll be making over the summer about production and how to think through producing a song. So yeah, I mean, that's everything we did last night, Bill, was pretty much arrangement. That's kind of what arrangement is. But yeah, we'll probably talk about it a little bit more. Blue Java says, your acoustic guitars always sound great. How many tracks do you typically use for acoustic guitars? Do you record multiple or just duplicate one, take, and pan it differently? Or a combination? First thing, Blue Java, never, ever, after you hear this, I never want you to duplicate a track and pan it separately. That does not do anything. The only thing it can possibly do is make your mix sound worse, especially if you duplicate it and you pan one left and one right, and then you try to nudge one left or right, or add delay to one of the tracks to make it feel wide. It will feel wide, but it's going to sound horrible. You've probably experienced that. The reason the guitars you hear that I record sound so good, and especially sound so wide, is because you're listening to different performances. So a lot of times lately I'll have a guitar up the middle, one on the left and one on the right, and then there might be a few more playing little melodies here and there. Some of the songs from my EP that I released last year called Rain, which was an acoustic EP, there's some songs on there. It's just an acoustic EP that have 10 acoustic guitar tracks. Now, I know you think that sounds crazy, but some are strumming chords, some are playing little melodies, and everything in between, and it all works together well. But no, I never, ever duplicate and pan. That will never, ever work. Chris says, finally got into my first single recording, not to mixing yet. What's your one piece of advice? One piece of advice for you is don't expect this first one to be great. I know that's negative, but if this is your very first one, don't have super high expectations. Go in there, do your best, finish it, and move on to the next one. This is song number 1 for you. It may turn out amazing. Statistically, it's probably not going to turn out amazing. So just move on. Song number 20 for you is going to start to sound pretty good. Song number 50 is where you're going to really start to see you've really come a long way and starting to make really amazing sounding music. So don't put all your eggs in this first basket. This is a journey, and you're making a great song right now, but it's going to be 10 times better when you get to your 10th and 20th and 30th and 50th song. Good question, though. Hey, Joe. Whoops. See, this chat sometimes just skips, and then I lose my place. Okay, Tim said, questions about this. I literally don't know anything about the Studio One upgrade other than what I did in the one little video. I assume all the version 3 stuff stays. I'm not sure why they would take any of that stuff away. NP says, what do you think about Antelope Audio products? They're great. Never used them. Callum says, can you fake saturation on a mix bus by using tape delay, setting the delay to 0 milliseconds and outputting 0% dry and 100% wet and only running audio through the plugin? I suppose so, but I don't know for sure. I'm not sure why you'd want to. Just get a plugin that does it, or better yet, don't worry about saturation. I don't use it, and I feel like I'm getting good results without it. Have you experienced difference in CPU performance in version 4 versus version 3? No. Honestly, I'm not going to take any more questions on Studio One because I literally got it yesterday and poked around with it. I've heard that the performance is better on the computer, but I've literally had it for less than 24 hours, so I really can't answer much more than that. Have you spent much time with DAW mode on your mixer? Yes, I'm starting to spend more time with it, and I'll be shooting some videos on that. It's pretty cool. There are things I love about it, things I don't love about it. So the verdict is still out, but yeah. I'll be doing some videos on that soon. Mark says, do you know if Tim Horsley will be doing more videos as a drummer with a tracking room? Those really help point me in the right direction. Yes, he's working on some right now. Steven says, are you going to record the show on June 1st? You, Frankie, and Homestead. No, I don't think we're recording it. Also, it's on May 30th, not June 1st, I think. Any advice on how to record a band during a live venue? Man, that's almost too vague of a question. Also, I'm not really a live venue guy, so maybe ask somebody who is. If they run a Studio Live Presonus board, then just plug in and you can multi-track everything because it is an audio interface. Otherwise, there's splitter snakes and things involved that that's not my deal. When's the next Simply Recording episode? Probably never. We've kind of closed that chapter in our lives, so we're both moving on to other stuff. Carlos says, I've noticed that my mixes are not as loud when I put the audio of the song with the video. How can I fix that? You need to learn what mastering is. Go to my YouTube channel and search for a video I did on how to make my mixes louder. That'll get you started, but the reason everything you hear out there is loud is because it's been mastered. If you don't know how to master and you're not having someone master your stuff, that's where you need to focus your attention. Otherwise, your stuff will be fairly quiet. What are the best budget monitors under $400 for a pair? I don't know. I got my monitors about 12 years ago, and they still work, so I don't shop for monitors because mine work. Sorry, y'all keep asking questions about stuff I can't answer. So let's keep going down the line. Ever thinking about going back to Logic? Why and why not? Any other interesting DAWs? Reason 10. No, I don't think about changing. I know I changed to Studio One, and that was somewhat by accident. I have no intention of changing anywhere else. There's just no reason. Studio One does everything I need, and I'm not constantly looking for any. See, a lot of people, they look to change their software because they actually secretly are scared to make music. And so they come up with an excuse of, oh, I really need to get Studio One. I really need to get the new version of Logic. I really need to get Reaper. I really need to upgrade. And it's all just one big excuse. It's all just one big scam where they're letting their fear dictate what they're doing. Now, that's not true of everyone, but it's true for a lot of people. If you like to have lots of pieces of software because that's how you work, fine. But no, I like to stick with what I have, and I like to focus on making music. You know what I mean? Are we allowed to ask more than one question? Of course. There's actually a little bit smaller group today than normal, so ask away. Any tips on mixing strings with the rest of the band? If the strings sound pretty good already, in a full band mix, if you do a big boost up high with a nice EQ, it could actually add a lot of air that sounds really cool. Too much is hard, but it can actually help it cut across everything pretty well. Paul says, I'm having a problem when recording vocals. When I get it up to negative 18 dB, I'm getting too much room noise. Any advice besides BOGOs? You mean gobos? I mean, it could be anything. Could be you're using a cheap microphone with a low output. Could be you're using a cheap preamp that doesn't have a good signal to noise kind of deal, so it has a lot of built-in noise. Or option 3, which is what I think it is, it's actually not a problem. Most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, the things people are worried about with noise, you don't hear in the final mix. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm guessing that's what it is. Or it could be you're too far away from the microphone. If you get closer to the microphone, you don't have to turn it up as much to get a good signal. That's something I would consider as well. And then, yes, if you haven't watched my video series on setting up a bedroom studio, go watch that, because the initial room that I used a bedroom that's off of my studio here and actually set up a rig in there. First thing was there was just drywall everywhere in a big echoey room. So I dealt with that first, then I was able to get a great recording. You can hear the final song. I actually recorded a whole song in there. It turned out great, and I just used cheap mics in a halfway treated room, and it worked well. What miking technique do you use for vocals? Eye level and angled down? No, I'm pretty simple. I just put the mic in front of their mouth and have them get fairly close to get a nice warm sound. Yeah, I don't go fancy. Do you use Mix Tool plugin on every channel for volume control? No. If the track is way too quiet or way too loud, I use clip gain. I actually turn down the audio file itself. No need to bring in Mix Tool for that. You can, but it's just one more plugin in your session when you can easily just go in, like if you're looking at my screen right now. See if I can do this without breaking anything. If I click over here, yeah, see how this is a piece of audio, and that little knob right there, I can do this. I'm adjusting the volume of that track, the audio itself, so that when whatever it's feeding into the track, that changes that audio. That's how I do it instead of Mix Tool. It's way easier, way simpler, and you can select all your tracks or all the drums and move them up and down together really quickly, which is pretty cool. I actually use a keyboard shortcut that whenever I have a piece of audio selected and I press the plus sign, it increases it 3 dB, minus sign, and decreases it 3 dB. Super, super handy. Tharlin Ooh says, tried adding plate reverb, but my vocal sounds not big. Any advice on making them feel wider and larger? I guess I would ask, why does it need to be wider? Because a vocal isn't a stereo instrument, so it really doesn't need to be wider. Could be that it just needs to be louder, and it also could be just the tone of the voice itself. Maybe it's not meant to be a really upfront sounding voice, and you got to kind of navigate that a little bit. But without hearing it and any more specifics, it's hard for me to really say. Josiah says, what do you think about mixing while recording? Sometimes I do some EQ and compression before I get into the mixing stage. Should I take them off when I get ready to mix? Great question. When I'm doing recording and mixing, yeah, I'm doing all sorts of mixing along the way. If the drum has a resonance that I want to take out, that I don't want to listen to, I'll take it out. Now, I don't go remove all those plugins when I go to mix unless I don't like the sound. If it doesn't sound great to me, sure, remove them all. If you like the sound, then the only reason to remove them is because you're following some rule that says I have to remove them. And I don't like following rules just for the sake of following rules. If it sounds good, keep moving forward. No need to undo what you've done just for the sake of some principle. I say if it sounds good, keep rolling. Which audio interface should I buy? I'm getting into recording. Call Sweetwater. They will help you figure that out. They sell the stuff and they know it really well. I do not, unfortunately. I use the stuff I have, and I don't really shop for stuff until mine breaks. Then I go and research and stuff. But right now, I wouldn't be the right guy to ask you that, to answer that for you. Chris says, how do I deal with high ceilings when recording vocals? I'm good with soundproofing around, but not up. It might not be a big deal. I would just listen to the recording. If you got good absorption around, it may not be a problem at all. If not, I guess you could lay a piece of foam over the top or something, but it's one of those things, I wouldn't make it a problem until it becomes a problem and you're actually hearing it in your mixes. Hey Joe, do you use the console shaper in Studio One? I do. I just use the one that comes with it. I know there's other ones you can buy, but I like it. It adds a little bit of warmth and low end and kind of a roundness to the mix, especially for rock stuff, makes the bass feel a little bit bigger. Would you please record your concert? What are you talking about? Oh, the concert. You know, it's not here at my place, and I'm more interested in just performing and playing and having a fun time with the people who come. Setting up all that stuff to record, it's possible, and we might do it, but honestly, I just want to play and hang out with people. And running a recording session adds a whole nother level that I'm not super interested in doing. Sorry. Skinny Chili says, hey Joe, thanks for making such informative content. What are your top 5 items on the Taco Bell menu? I love the Doritos Locos taco, any of them. The double decker is pretty good, and I'll just give you top 2. That's all I can think of. I used to like their little Mexican pizza, and then I realized it's disgusting. I'm kidding. Mark Strickland says, when you're recording drums and checking phase, do you start with comparing everything to the overheads, then moving in a specific sequence of importance? You know, I've changed it a lot over the years, Mark. I used to be big on get the overhead and listen to it and make it sound amazing and then add everything else. At this point, I kind of just bring up all the faders of the drums and get a good drum mix with no plugins. Then I start adding, because the overheads can be so different from song to song, recording to recording. One set of overheads might be perfectly balanced and it's okay for it to make up the majority of the sound. Another one might have way too much cymbals to where it really can't be the bulk of your sound. You have to bring it down in volume a lot so the cymbals aren't overwhelming, so you're needing to rely on the spot mics for more of your sound. A lot of more modern stuff isn't just overheads anymore, right? It's mostly kick and snare and then some overheads sprinkled in. So I like to just push up the faders and get a balance that feels good to me. Then I put some stuff on the mix, on the drum bus, you know, EQ compression. Then I work my way backwards from there. That's usually my process. Nothing gets treated unless there's a reason for treating it, if that makes sense. Any rule of thumb about reverb on your snare drum? No, I don't use it all the time. I'd rather use a room mic. A heavily compressed room mic gives you a bit of a reverb, snare reverb sound that's super cool. But otherwise, if it needs it, I'll throw a send on a snare drum for reverb, but that's actually not terribly common anymore. Most of the time I'm getting the sound I want just out of the tracks themselves, and if I do use reverb, a lot of times I try to send the reverb off of the entire drum bus. I know that sounds weird, but if you're EQing your reverb like you probably should be doing, what I do is roll off a lot of low end below 200 on my reverbs, then I can send a full drum mix to it and it doesn't make it big and boomy. It actually just makes it sound like another room mic. So especially when I get tracks that don't have room mics, I'll use reverb to kind of create a room sound when there wasn't one to begin with. The Street Kicker says, hey Joe, do you ever feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind? I do. Sometimes I do feel empty inside and pointless and worthless like a plastic bag. I think we all do, right? At least sometimes. I thought it was probably just a joke question, but it's actually, you know, it does feel that way sometimes. I know that's a song lyric from somewhere, and I can't remember who sang it. A99 Productions says, just finished my mix of Raise My Flag from Dueling Mixes. Way to go, dude. Hope it sounds good. Greek name again. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce. I don't know what it says. A local band from where I live just released an EP, and it's mono. Sounds huge, focused, and punchy. Blew my mind. Really inspiring. I love stuff like that. I'm a big fan of panning things left and right, but the fact that you can get something amazing in mono, or things like a lot of the Black Keys records, the drums are in mono, and you think you can't do that. They sure did, and it rocks, which just goes to show you any kind of limitation you put on yourself can end up being an asset. I bet that project you're talking about probably wouldn't sound as good if they had let themselves do it in stereo. So even doing it in mono forced them to make different decisions, and all that added up to a really great sounding project. That's really cool. I love that. Nathan says, do you have a go-to chord progression, or do you try to make it something you haven't used before every time? So talking about when I'm writing songs and doing songwriting, I don't have a go-to chord progression. That seems like a recipe for a lot of repetition. But there are things that I tend to do just in my personality, like if I'm playing a song and I tend to go, like if it's in G, I'm going between G and C, maybe A minor in there, and then I might do an E minor D C thing. That's pretty common for me. I'm just trying to do something that resonates with me, something that I'm excited to play, and something that doesn't feel like something I've done before. So I'm kind of trying to hit all those points. But biggest thing is just something I connect with. Survey says that was a Katy Perry song. I'm sure I am making myself seem less relevant by not knowing that trivia. Josiah says, do you find that too much reverb on a snare drum takes volume away from it after mastering? Too much reverb usually is a bad thing. But sometimes, I mean, reverb's coming back. Listen to some of the stuff coming out lately. It's pretty stinking great. And sometimes it has a lot of reverb on there. So it just depends. Do you have any thoughts on the Presonus Faderport 8? It does look cool. It's not for me because I've already got this Studio Live, but it's super cool. Do you have an adult beverage of choice? Whiskey guy from Tennessee. You know, last year I got into bourbon, so I'm kind of digging bourbon. But my wife and I usually have a glass of red wine every night for the antioxidants. That's an Office reference. Is there any technique or advice for doing a whisper track? No. Use a condenser so it's nice and bright. Otherwise, just make sure they're not popping the mic if they're getting super close to it. Joe, any idea or tried if DistroKid has an artist music promoting deals? Any deals promoting you, DistroKid? I don't think so. But I don't know. You should call them up and ask. And that's all the time we have, folks.